members of the British Model Flying Association, the BMFA. Here they're offering on the crowd line. As we've been saying, many of the exhibitions will be staying open until 7 p.m. and refreshment outlets likewise. So when we come to the conclusion of the flying display, no need to rush off and potentially add to the traffic.
Yes, and on the subject of traffic, we'll remind you of this, but there are traffic directions that we ask you to observe, and it's worth bearing in mind we've got a crowd of about 15,000 people here today, so you could be delayed leaving, or it would be a better idea, as Ben was just saying, the museum is open until 7 o'clock, so don't rush to the car park to join the queue. Just let the queue die down a little bit. You probably have a much more user-friendly journey home.
Now, a very special thank you is to be extended to all of the IWM members who are attending the Airshow today. IWM is, of course, a charity, so it depends on its members to enable the stories of those impacted by conflict to continue to be told. And support from museum members during the museum's important historic sites and the specific collections, like the one we're enjoying here today at Duxford, are protected forever. So thank you very much for your support. If you're not already a member and you would like to support IWM, please visit us today at one of the membership points around the site.
And certainly an element of elegance in the airliners that you have.
Certainly, yeah. I mean, all of our airliners, apart from looking immaculate outside, are fully restored inside for the period.
It'll be getting airborne in advance of its slot and going off to hold away from the airfield. Then I'll be leading you into 2-minute silence in honour of the late Queen, starting at 8 minutes past 1. And then at 10 minutes past 1, the silence will be broken by the run-in of the Spitfire for its solo commemorative display to open our show. Once again, to run through the rest of the programme very quickly in case you missed it, the Spitfire is followed by the Hangar 11 Collection's P-51 Mustang. Then we have our Eastern Front combination, a two-ship of Hispano-Bouchons representing the Messerschmitt Bf-109, and a solo Yakovlev Yak-3. Another solo display to follow that, with B-17G Flying Fortress Sally B, and then into two very unusual four-ship formations. The first of them we've seen before, but it's very, very welcome. The Bristol Blenheim, which is back on the circuit this year for the first time since 2019, accompanied by two Westland Lysanders and the Gloucester Gladiator, and then four fighters of the early part of World War II, our 1938 formation, because they were all airborne in 1938. A few of them slightly earlier designs than that indeed, but all of them redolent of that crucial period in the run-up to World War II. The Spitfire 1, the Hurricane 1, the Wildcat and the Hawk 75. Then we have the Czech Air Force with the Mi-35 and Mi-171 battlefield helicopters, the debut for that air arm here. The Suffolk Spitfire follows that, a solo display from the Mark 16 in US Army Air Forces markings. And then the Tiger 9 with today 7 DH-82A Tiger Moths, a single Moth Major and a single Queen Bee. A pair of naval fighters then from the fighter collection, the Bearcat and the Corsair, and then a biplane naval fighter also from TFC, the Hawker Nimrod. That's followed by the only jet in the display, the de Havilland Vampire of the Norwegian Air Force Historical Squadron. And then the Czechs are back on with a solo display from the Mi-35. A pair of Beech D-17S Stagger Wings makes for a very unusual sight in the skies over Duxford. And then at 20 to 5, we're into our finale with the solo slot being taken by the red and silver Spitfire 14 with the Griffon engine, owned by Aerial Speed Icons and operated by the Aircraft Restoration Company. The big formation, the Duxford Wing, redolent of the big wing led by Douglas Bader that was in action from here and Duxford's satellite station at Falmere during the summer of 1940. A mixture of Spitfires and Hurricanes. We have 16 Spitfires and 4 Hurricanes in that display, led of course by the IWM's very own Spitfire 1A, the Dunkirk veteran N3200, which we'll also have seen earlier in our 1938 formation. And that takes us through until 20 5 this evening, and during the latter stages of that finale, we will once again be offering a further salute to the passing of Her Majesty the Queen. So that's the lineup for this afternoon. What dramatic skies we have around Duxford at the moment. What a splendid array of aeroplanes. Of the show, but please do show your appreciation to John Romain for flying that special solo display as he taxis the Spitfire back in past you.
It was quite a saga that led to the BF-109 being equipped with a Rolls-Royce Merlin engine, that rather ironic combination. The Spanish connection with the 109 itself went back to the Spanish Civil War.
And the Legion Condor, Germans operating with Franco's nationalist forces. They began using the aircraft as early as mid-1937. When the conflict ended in April 1939, nearly 50 BF-109s were left for use by the Spanish Air Force, and yet more were delivered new.
Rather than as a bomber escort fighter, the Soviets used the likes of the Bell P-39 Airacobra, the Lavochkin LA-5 and 7, and the Yak-3 sister aircraft, the Yak-9, for those duties. But it was a very effective point defence fighter. It was fast and agile at low level. Large-scale deliveries really began in the summer of 1944, and the aircraft's capabilities began to be proved by its most famous user.
Was an outfit best known as the Normandie-Yemen Squadron, officially known as Régiment de Chasse 3.
The Boeing B-17G Flying Fortress, named Sally B.
This aircraft acting as a permanent flying memorial to...
because they were dropping bombs really close to the advancing Allies.
Indeed, and then of course we've just seen the Yak-3 there. There were the so-called shuttle missions where B-17s would leave their home base, attack their targets and land elsewhere to refuel and rearm.
Looking forward to this aircraft notching up its 50th anniversary display season in 2025, but it needs your support to do so. So do go along to the Sally B stand. As the B-17 clears then, we're going to get our Bristol Mercury engine to formation into the air. Always a treat. Off the hard runway goes the Bristol Blenheim 1F. And then look at this, going off the grass, the two very distinctive forms of the Westland Lysander 3As. And last to roll, the RAF's final new biplane fighter, the Glock Gladiator 1.
But now look out to the motorway end to the left. Here comes the Mercury formation of the Blenheim, the two Lysanders and the Gladiator. In the Mark I versions of both the Spitfire and the Hurricane, contrasting with the rumbling radials, the Pratt & Whitney Twin Wasp in the Hawk 75, the Wright R1820 of the Wildcat. They remain on the wings of the Spitfire. This Mark I Hurricane, we see Sinclair was a pre-war pilot with number 19 Squadron. He started out in 1937 on the Gauntlet. He went on to claim 5 kills with 19 during the Dunkirk evacuation and the Battle of Britain, being awarded the Distinguished Flying Cross. And he was one of its very first Spitfire pilots. Talking some years ago to an IWM researcher, he described his first experiences of the Spitfire when they were delivered to number 19 Squadron here from August 1938.
Machine. I must confess I didn't terribly like the Spitfire to begin with, but then I had a reason not to, because the first flight I ever did in one, I turned it upside down with and I think it gave me the inborn fear of it. It took me quite a lot of hours to get over that. But a lot of other people, like James Card, were doing what we call Oswald twistles and things like that over the aerodrome. The first flight, it took to knock it down to water. But it was a wonderful aeroplane. There was no question about that. It looked bright. But tactically, from the point of view of fighting, we didn't know any difference because we didn't know how to fight in a gauntlet. Nobody told us.
And indeed, the change in fighters at this aerodrome, these forming the initial cadre of 310 Squadron. 24 of them arrived on that date, 9 more followed the next day, the 13th of July. They were equipped with Hawker Hurricanes, and the complement of Czechoslovaks stationed at Duxford grew as the summer of 1940 went on. The formation of a second Czechoslovak manned squadron, number 312 Squadron, took place also here on the 29th of August 1940. Again on Hurricanes. While the tenure of one of those squadrons at Duxford was to be relatively brief, the other would linger rather longer. The 312 Squadron spent only August-September 1940 at Duxford before being deployed elsewhere. And the 310 Squadron, however, remained here until June 1941. The Czechoslovak pilots would of course be here with different units of those two Czechoslovak fighter squadrons. Has to be permanently stationed at Duxford for Air Force back in Duxford skies because they'd never previously participated. And there's the Mi-35, an export version of the Mi-24V, turning away first. We'll incidentally be seeing the Hind again later in a full solo display. My goodness, this is a type I've wanted to see over Duxford for a very, very long time. That menacing silhouette of an attack helicopter that would have supported a Warsaw Pact armed advance across the North German plain into the rest of Western Europe had the Cold War turned hotter than it ever became. Developed initially as a new armed assault helicopter, intended to have infantry lift as well as attack capabilities. Meantime, as the Hind patrols overhead, in comes the Hip for a touch-and-go landing. The Hind, incidentally, saw its combat debut in Ethiopia in its war of 1977 to 78 with Somalia. But where it really won its spurs first was during the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan in 1979 to 80. It was very successful ready to leave the stage clear for one of our favourite big display teams here at IWM Duxford. They're lined up now on the grass runway, ready once the Spitfire is clear to roll for takeoff. And it's as always my huge pleasure to hand over to Tim Emrys-Roberts. Tim.
Thank you very much, Ben. And yes, it's a delight to be back here at Duxford. We've seen so many of these. We've seen the Blenheim, we've seen Lysanders, Hurricanes, Spitfires. You think, well, all these men who flew these magnificent machines would have had to have learnt how to fly originally. And this, the Tiger Moth, is the aircraft in which the majority of them would have learnt to fly. Built from 1931 to 1945, they built 8,600 of them, of which no fewer than 1,000 are still in existence, of which 650 are flying today. And here they're starting. Their leader, Jeff Milsom, in the distinctive green aircraft, lead them off in stream formation, 3-second gaps between each. Jeff is a former RF fighter pilot, and then flying Phantoms, and then later became a captain with British Airways on the Airbus A320. Following behind him is Mike Vasey, a private pilot who helped create Vintech. These wonderful vintage engines, and could speak a little to them, they were certainly such a magnificent song. Any second now, get ready with those cameras. And braking now. Lovely. And then Nigel Lemon in the Moth Major, bringing up the rear with a half Cuban. Let's bring it on. Bringing up the rear, it's that 21 outsider. It's David Twister. A flying finish indeed. And the team will now be making their landings.
aircraft being used in the Indochina conflict of the 1950s. Modified bear cat named Rare Bear that dominated the unlimited gold race of bear for many years, and in 1989 set a world speed record for this version aircraft. Benchmark has since been exceeded by Steve Hinston Jr. in the 1954 Mustang. This is all we know of the aircraft. They think of two feasible photo reconnaissance. Served with the US Navy for about a decade, then went into civilian hands.
Just looking a little further ahead, if you've never been to Duxford before, just remember that the museum will remain open until 7 o'clock this evening, so there's no need for a mad rush to the car parks. We have got a big crowd here today, something around the sort of 17,000 mark, something like that, so there's lots of people here. It may take a little while to leave. When you do get in your car and exit the car parks, then just follow the directions that are going to be offered to you. If you're on the western side of the airfield, if you park up there, then it will be turned left when you leave this afternoon. There are links to the A1, the A10, the A11, the A14, and the M11. But travel north to the next exit, then take the A10.
Oh, EasyJet, yeah. Oh, actually, is it EasyJet? I've seen 3 or 4 of them. Well, her son's cabin crew. EasyJet.
Yeah.
Blimey.
Thanks, mate.
You're having a free airshow then?
I don't know, yeah.
And first off, to go off the hold, will be a sight not seen at Duxford for some time. 2 examples of the beach staggering now taking to the runway, led by an example that's returned to the air display circuit this year after fully 40 years of absence. Seconds to roll for the 2 stagger wings in production in Russia. They've been equipped with a fixed undercarriage as opposed to retractable. Have made many memorable visits to other UK air shows over the years. lines stretching from Florida to Canada. In the early 1980s, it crossed the Atlantic for a new owner in Germany. It then suffered a takeoff incident and was fully rebuilt. Jeffrey Lynch bought it in 2008. He has this one, as you can see, this very smart yellow. He has another one in maroon.
British airmen who, undaunted by odds, unwearied in their constant challenge and mortal danger, are turning the tide of the world war by their prowess and by their devotion. Never in the least the name of
don't really need any more.
Airshow, and once again, you all thank you for your support, not only for the whole day and our day of commemoration here, but for all you do here for sticking with it through the terrible weather there as well. I'm sure you thought those final moments well worth it, as it did we. And before we conclude our Then we had Mark 5 of Anglia Aircraft Restoration with Gabriel Parson at the control and Dave Harvey flying the historic aircraft selected Mark 5. We had the Signal 6 Mark 9s, NH-4P4 from the Royal Flying Machine Company with Lee Proudfoot at the helm. Neil Parkinson was in Martin Phillips Mark 9 and Dave Fullerton was in NH-415 from Air Leasing. The 269s of the Aircraft Restoration Company were flown by Brian Swift and